Hello, welcome to TI Media. I'm your presenter, Manjang, on the special show called the Diaspora Eye. Here are your Diaspora News Roundup. Mr. Esther Williams has been in the news and social media for making certain remarks. Among them are, and I quote, "If a government has a reputation of being corrupt, if a government has the reputation of hiding the truth from its citizens, if a government has the habit of lying, credibility is the currency of government." These among many remarks he made during the interview on The Viewpoint with QTV. Made his colleague or former colleague in the media, now the Gambian Minister of Information, Communication Infrastructure, Mr. Ibrahim Asila, furious. According to the news in the social media, the minister himself called the management of QTV to remove the interview down from their YouTube channel, which made the minister to come under heavy criticism, following a censorship claim by the international journalist Mr. Esther Williams. In other news, a $20 airport tax levy has been introduced on the diasporans traveling to the Gambia. The Gambia Civil Aviation Authority or the Gambia government has installed collection booths to manually collect $40 on everybody traveling to the Gambia in and out. With me, your presenter, Manjang. Stay tuned. I'm sorry. I'm sorry because you wouldn't see your mom again, because he's passed away. I'm sorry your father has equally passed away. Your brother, sister, all gone too soon. I'm sorry that I couldn't save them, because there is no cure. All our hospitals and mortuaries are full. The health system is crumbling down because most of the doctors and nurses are dying of coronavirus. Coronavirus is real. Save yourself, save me, and save your families and loved ones by wearing a face mask. Wash your hands regularly. Use hand sanitizers. In this way, you protected, I'm protected, they are protected. Stay safe and stay healthy. Hello, welcome back to TI Media. I'm your presenter, Manjang, on this very special show called the Diaspora Eye. Like I clearly mentioned earlier on that I'm going to have a very special guest. Yes, a very special guest to myself and all the diasporans because he's a product of the diaspora. I mean, just go through his profile here. A FCCA Director Gambia in September 1993 to April 1997. May 1997 to August 1998, Financial Controller in Kenya. September 1998 to March 2000, Regional Finance Manager in London, quite interesting. April 2000 to May 2002, Chief Financial Officer, Exclusive Director in Côte d'Ivoire. Donc, tu parles français? I will come to that with him. Very soon we'll find out whether he speaks French as well. June 2003 to July 2004, Branch Expansion Project Manager. August 2004, March 2007, Chief Financial Officer, Southern Africa Exclusive Director in Botswana. Most recently, Director General of Social Security, Hygiene Finance and Corporation. Mr. Mohammed Manjang, welcome to the Diaspora Eye, sir.
Thank you, Lamin.
It's a pleasure to have you, and thank you very much for honoring our invitation.
Thank you.
If I might start asking you, where are you speaking to us from today?
I'm speaking to you from Brufut in the Gambia. It's a Sunday, so I'm calling you from my house.
Thank you very much, Mr. Manjang. We were thinking that following our researches that you were somewhere already in Nigeria. But however, coming to you, Mr. Manjang, as the name Diaspora Eye suggests, you are a very classic example and a success of the diaspora. What really motivates you to leave the Gambia and work in the diaspora or in abroad? when Gambia needed people like yourself in the professional field you were?
Yeah, I wouldn't call it something innate that was pushing you to move out of the country. I don't think that's what it was. I mean, when I completed my studies in the UK, I mean, I had an opportunity to work in the UK. In fact, I started working immediately after my graduation. But, you know, I have a special attachment to the country, so I felt like coming back was my destiny, and I came back. But, you know, over time, I joined the Standard Chartered Bank, and Standard Chartered Bank is a multinational corporation. And working for them, when they identify people with potential, they want to make sure they maximize that potential. And in their mind, I suppose I had overgrown what was available in the country, and they decided to move me out of the Gambia, initially to Kenya, to start my journey, international journey with Standard Chartered in Kenya. So that's how that came about. It also was at a time when, you know, like I said, it's a multinational. So whilst working with the company, you have an opportunity, if you have proven yourself, to be moved around their businesses in the world. I mean, they had a presence at the time in around 75 countries. You know, so depending on your skills and ability, you have the possibility to be working in any one of those countries.
Mashallah, we've seen that you had a great career abroad, returning back recently into the Gambia to rejuvenate the social security, housing, and finance. What really can you tell us whether it was true that pensioners' money were misused in the social security department?
I think that was self-evident, that the funds were misused. Certainly, I think the Jane commissions of inquiry prove that fact. If you look at what came out of the commission, roughly about $2 billion of social security funds were misdirected out of the institution to various ventures, most of which were unsuccessful. And up until today, there is over 1.8 billion, or at least at the time I left, there was at least 1.8 billion outstanding, the likelihood of recovery of which is very slight. And at the time, that constituted roughly 25 to 30% of Social Security's balance sheet. So that was significant. So that was misuse. And so I think it is not an understatement to say pensioner funds were abused, certainly during the AIJAME administration.
I've also followed most of your interviews. Recently, you've been removed from the Social Security to be employed to go and work in the diplomatic mission. However, you have toned it down, which I really agree with you based on the fact that it was the skills that was not in your interest. But will you say that this was a politically motivated move or a tactical move from the government?
Well, I will be speculating if I venture in that area, because I wasn't given a reason. But clearly, the reason that the government said does not sound very credible. You cannot say it is for the purposes of enhancing performance or improving overall performance, but you take someone from an area of competence to something that really it will be impossible for them to take up simply because they do not have the requisite skills to do that job. So whilst I cannot definitively say the reasons other than what I was told, but the reasons I was told don't sound very convincing.
And can you elaborate a little bit? What were the reasons? And if you can tell us which diplomatic mission they wanted to put you through?
Well, I wasn't specifically given a reason.
So you were not given any reason at all for your removal from Social Security?
I wasn't. I mean, the letter to me was appointment and redeployment. that I was being appointed and redeployed to the Senegalo-Gambian Secretariat. That is all the letter said. And then the effective date, which was immediate actually. That's what all the letter said. The reason I mentioned is what the director of communication, the government spokesperson, said in his release, that those moves were done essentially to improve operational performance, something along those lines. So that is what I'm saying. That is the reason
But did you, by any chance, require explanation from the government or from the spokesperson of the government? Did you, by any chance, require explanations, please?
No, I didn't. I think employment of that nature at that level are always done on the pleasure of the presidency. That's what the act of the corporation says. And so long as that remains as the act, he or she can decide anytime to move around. Now, that does not necessarily make it the right thing to do, but for now, that is the law.
Is that the constitutional right of the president or just a right by the president?
Sorry?
Is that a constitutional right by the president or is it just a right from the president himself?
That's what the Act says. The Social Security Act states the appointment of the chief executive officer is by the president. Now, it did not specify what he or she needs to go through to do that appointment. But then again, I mean, when I was appointed out of 2 million people. Again,
Absolutely.
The president decided to appoint me. I did not complain at the time.
That's true.
So when he removes me from office, I mean, I would have no reason to complain.
So you were taking it as you've been removed from office instead?
Well, that's what it says. I mean, it says, in fact, it didn't say removed. It says you are redeployed.
Redeployed.
It's an appointment and redeployment.
So they were still willing to carry on with your employment, but in a different platform or in a different place?
Yeah, the letter was very specific. It says you are appointed and redeployed to the Senegalo-Gambian Secretariat as the Deputy Executive Secretary, because the position of Executive Secretary is always held by the Senegalese counterpart.
Well, we have seen in the diaspora here and most people living back home that the great success that you have brought into Social Security. Will you say that these were skills required or acquired rather from abroad, or it's a combination of factors?
Well, I think it would be imperious of me to sit here and claim that the success was entirely mine. I think it was a collective effort. Mm-hmm. People put in a lot of sacrifice, and I think we worked together to deliver what we delivered over that period of time. But I am fortunate that I have had the exposure, both locally and internationally, to work with some very competent people who have transferred to me some knowledge and skills to help in turning around situations. Social Security, and indeed any institution in this country, to turn around will not be easy, will be very challenging.
Absolutely.
Challenging because of our entrenched culture of how we do things. So I think sometimes to really make a difference is to be willing to really disrupt that. And I think anytime that is disrupted, there certainly will be improvement. I think in a lot of these organizations, there are very low-hanging fruits. You really don't need to try hard to make a transformation. I think it's sustenance of that that probably would be more challenging and difficult. But coming back, I think it would be arrogant of me to sit here and say that was entirely mine. It was a combination of every single person in Social Security. People had to really sacrifice and give up on a lot of things to make happen what we did.
Yeah, that I will agree with you, but we have seen being in the diaspora and so many platforms that it was not something that was really easy. Demonstrations were held outside the department. How was it like for you and your family? How was it like for you?
Yeah, it was never, it wasn't easy. I mean, it was challenging. People have said so many terrible things.
Absolutely.
There
Accusations
was
have
a,
come in place.
yeah, there was a lot of fabrication, but if you're true to yourself and you know what you're doing is for the common purpose, it eventually will come out, and I went through that largely by really ignoring the noise. I was very focused on the task ahead of me. And the task ahead of me was really not to get myself involved in the petty talks. One thing I am very fortunate about is I do not entertain petty talk, and because I do not entertain petty talk, this common thread of people coming and be, telling you bits and pieces, that's not my nature, it's not my character. So I think a combination of all of these things really helped by not really focusing too much on the things that were going around, and be very clear and this really, I was in myself, I was clear that my objective was really to drive this organization forward, to really recognize the importance of any pension scheme and how a pension scheme can significantly contribute to economic development.
Absolutely.
And that was my drive and that was my focus. But that's not to say that period was not difficult. It was difficult.
Absolutely. I could
You
imagine.
know, um, my family, my immediate family, particularly the parents, it was almost like saying, but you don't need this. And I'm saying, listen, yeah, but I cannot also run away. Running away would almost be satisfying people who are determined to push you out and will almost be validating a lie that is not truth. And I cannot do that.
Very right. From the diaspora perspective, taking yourself as a very humble example, many Gambian professionals in the diaspora, do you think diasporans play a key role into the development of the Gambia?
Absolutely. Absolutely. The diaspora in every part of the world, certainly in developing countries, is a very significant pillar and a major contributor to economic development. It is the fuel in most cases. Gambia is no different. If you look at the case of Gambia, depending on where you take your statistics from, if you look at the World Bank or ILO or wherever else you go to, the diaspora contributes anywhere between 15 to 20% of GDP. That is significant. And it is about 10% or thereabout of Gambia's population outside. Now that's about $275 million to $300 million as of 2019. I mean, again, depending the source you go to. That is material. Now that contribution has generally been going to supporting the livelihoods of family back home, but also to development projects like, in most cases, property investments. Now, all of these things have contributed in generating employment, in feeding businesses in this country, and those businesses in turn. So there has always been a multiplier effect of that 300 million injected back to the economy. So yes, the diaspora is always critical and important to economic development, but certainly to that of Gambia, given the significant size of its contribution to GDP.
I don't want to make this sound very political. The only reason I ask that question is purely based on the fact that we have seen the head of states in the Gambia that came out recently and categorized the diasporans as Bafenyo, Guinea Bay in Wolof, they will say. So that was one of the reasons why I just brought that to your attention. Do you know offhand how many percent in terms of the GDP of the Gambia that the diasporans contribute?
Yeah, that was an unfortunate statement. I think even at the time when this government came into power, they were, in fact, one of the things that they've said, I believe, was that the antagonism and I don't know the word exactly the president used, but something along the suspicion and antagonism towards the diaspora has now come to an end.
That's right.
But unfortunately, that seemed to have come back. And that is rather unfortunate because the diaspora is an important contributor to the GDP of the country. Like I said, diaspora right now contributes somewhere around 20% of our GDP. Now, that may say, World Bank put that to around $275 million as
Per
of
year.
2019. Yes, $275 million as of 2019. And ILO probably is a little bit higher, but I think this is all the contributions that have come through the formal sector. So if you look at the informal contribution, it is probably much higher than this. Now, this is a significant growth. If you look at what the diaspora contribution was 10 years ago, it was somewhere around $80 million. So over a span of 10 years, it has moved from 80 million to 275 to $300 million. And every year, despite all the economic crisis that has happened, say in 2008, 2009, and even the impact of what is happening now, on an annual basis, you're probably adding somewhere around 20 to $30 million channeled through the formal sector to the economy of this country. So it is important. And I think a lot of countries, what they are doing is really trying to see how to leverage the diaspora in the economic development. But the diaspora's contribution to any country is not just the monetary contribution. No, the diaspora generally is very diverse group, geographically spread, intergenerational, and with very different skills. So their contribution can really come in various aspects. The skill sets of the diaspora can make a significant difference to the economic growth of the country. Not just financially, they are already doing it, but that's not really properly harnessed. And it could have been properly harnessed to even be of a much more significant impact to our growth.
We'll take a short break. I've got Mr. Manjang, a financial investment specialist, with me today on this very special show called The Diaspora. I will take a short break. I'm sorry. I'm sorry because you wouldn't see your mom again, because he's passed away. I'm sorry your father has equally passed away. Your brother, sister, all gone too soon. I'm sorry that I couldn't save them, because there is no cure. All our hospitals and mortuaries are full. The health system is crumbling down because most of the doctors and nurses are dying of coronavirus. Coronavirus is real. Save yourself, save me, and save your families and loved ones by wearing a face mask, wash your hands regularly, use hand sanitizers. In this way, you protected, I'm protected, they are protected. Stay safe and stay healthy. Welcome back, viewers. I'm your presenter, Manjang, on this very special show called The Diaspora. Today, I'm very pleased to have a very special guest, Mr. Manjang, with me. Mr. Manjang, just coming to you, what can you tell us the economic impacts COVID-19 has got in the Gambia?
It's not something I have really taken time to review.
Yeah.
But there is no doubt, given what has happened in every other part of the world,
Yeah.
That COVID-19 has had significant impact on the economy. If you look at the disruption to even activities like the small scale businesses around and in the markets, the tourism sector, even the level of activity in even the larger scale businesses in this country every single one of those businesses have been impacted. We are already beginning to see impact on employment. Certainly, the diaspora, who we've just talked about, and their contribution to the economic development are in countries where they themselves are being impacted. So their remittances, even though data is not yet available, I think anecdotally we can really say we should see some reductions to what the levels have been in previous years. Now, a combination of all of these things will no doubt impact a small economy like that of the Gambia. Now, the full impact is delayed, but I think there is no doubt. If you look at the West, contractions are at levels where they have not been since World War II or thereabout. America just came up with their GDP, UK have just come up with their GDP declines, and significantly down. Now, the same problems that those countries have faced, Gambia face exactly the same problems, and probably even worse, because we do not have the cushions in the economy to support some of those shocks. Government did not come out to the same extent. In fact, they probably are not even able to come to the same extent like these other countries have done to support their respective economies. So there is no doubt. Now, there's no data available at this point in time to actually measure the impact of it. But I think there is no doubt, there is absolutely no doubt that the Gambian economy is impacted, and that is likely to be for a long period of time.
Now, if I'm just to bring your attention on one very important thing, in the Gambia, we have seen that there is a lot of favorism in terms of employment, which makes lots of Gambian diasporans to run away to go and serve in the Gambia. What is the problem in terms of employing people? Do you think there is a negligence in the system, or is it the failure of the government?
Sorry, I didn't quite get that question.
Yeah, the question is, in the Gambia, we have seen that there's lots of favorism in terms of employment. Lots of Gambian diasporans would like to serve in the system, to work in the Gambia, or even for the Gambia outside the Gambia. Now, do you think that there is a lot of failure in the system whereby these things are happening in the Gambia? Taking yourself as an example, what happened
I think when you say Gambia here, you're specifically referring to the public sector.
That's right.
To a large extent.
Yeah.
Yes, because I think the private sector, for the most part, try to be transparent in their employment processes. I think in the public sector, unfortunately, from my experience on what I have seen, seems to be longitude is what is rewarded. It is almost like a close-knit society. You have to be within the circle to really get progression up the ladder. So you either come in at a relatively young, very junior role, which is what happens. You come in at a junior role and you grow in the ranks. It is not easy to break in the ranks at middle management or higher level management. That is almost unacceptable. And I think that is the problem. And sometimes it is important. It is not about rewarding people in the system. If you really want progress and you really want to show growth, you really have to take the best people for the job. The best people for the job can be people within the system, but also can be people outside the system. But the only way to know that is to really transparently go out and give opportunity to every Gambian to apply for a job. Unfortunately, this is not happening. In the most part, this is not happening. And you know, sometimes it may just be because of the unknown availability of jobs. You know, see, there's a lack of economic opportunity in this country. And because there's a lack of economic opportunity in the country, people in certain levels, like you said, probably favoritism, no doubt, try to reserve those jobs. You know, outsiders are not very welcome.
That's true.
But unfortunately, it's a fact.
We've also observed there is no credible Gambian investors agencies back home, none in the diaspora. And I gather in the Philippines have one of the highest number of diasporans. The Philippines government have collaborated with their diasporas to create investment management agencies in their countries. Why is this lacking in the Gambia?
You know, again, this current administration, when they came into power, they partnered with Professor Fall, I believe, creating the migration and sustainable development in the Gambia. And I think one of the objectives, I believe, on top of trying to reduce the remittance costs, and I think reducing the remittance costs is very important, but I think it's really about harnessing the power of the diaspora in funneling funds into a specific area to reinvest into the economy outside of just property investment. Because I think we have to be able to invest in opportunities that will grow employment. That is really where you can see rapid economic development. Now, Philippines have done this very well. Philippines diaspora contributes something in the region of 30 billion or so per year to their economy. They have a similar size number, about 10% of their population, just as we do, 10% of our population. But in fact, our contribution is even a higher proportion of our GDP than it is that of Philippines. But nonetheless, Philippines is really harnessing. Philippines has got well-organized structures in place to make sure diaspora's funds is utilized in growing the economy of the Philippines. Now, we are not at that stage yet. I think we started well with this administration. The MSDG group with Professor Fall holds annual seminars. I think they have a whole administrative block working on this. Maybe they have come up with something, but it's been 3-4 years now. At least from my perspective, I haven't seen anything drastically different to what was the case before this administration. But somehow we have to be able to harness the diaspora. I think there are a number of areas. You see, the diaspora's remittance continues, but if you look at the remittance, 300 million is quite a substantial amount for the economy of this country. But it's mainly gone into supporting livelihoods and building properties.
Yes.
That is what it has gone to. Now, those are good investments. They are fueling the economy, right? That's true. But it could be even better. Now, we really need to have some kind of a fund which helps, because people here invest in property not so much because that is what they want, but because they do not have any other investment opportunity. So they put their money in property. Now, there's a lot of young SMEs coming here who do not have capital, who cannot rely on bank loans. But here you have a pool of funds which could actually be invested in the long term, and in that process help grow the economy and create more employment opportunity. But that is not happening. So, but maybe the MSDG group that is part of their plans, but it's not yet in place. Now, places like Philippines have got things like that in place going for them.
Which was going to bring me to my next question. By the virtue of your previous position in Social Security in managing pensions, do you think is an area worth exploring by the government or even private individuals?
Absolutely. I think anyhow that you can capture those funds and create some kind of like, you call it, whatever you call it. You see, investing in property is quite significant concentration of risk. Good quality property here will probably cost you $100,000 or $150,000. Now, to take all of that fund and put it in one investment is never an advisable way to go about investing. It's always better when you invest to really diversify. If you diversify, they counterbalance each other. Investments have can be very cyclical. So you want an investment where if one goes down, it is compensated by another that goes up. But if you put all your eggs in one basket, that is always too risky. But if you actually have a fund which actually captures all of this investment, it can help diversification by putting it in very many different classes. So you are not dependent on one single source of investment, but at the same time, you are creating an opportunity to grow the economy. So yes, I think it will make a lot of sense to do that. It's very difficult here individually to invest in businesses because that's not how our business enterprises here think. People want to do everything by themselves.
Absolutely.
They would rather go to a bank and borrow at some ridiculous interest rates because simply the banks cannot do long term because they themselves, their funds are short term. So we have to get around that. In most developed countries, you will probably go to the capital market. Some now have these crowdfunding platforms that can actually avail that. And we don't have those things yet. I know some people are thinking about that, but it is not yet in place. Now it has to go with two things, with the ability to do it, but also the credibility of the individuals behind it.
Now, ask yourself, an investment specialist, what advice will you have for Gambian diasporans in terms of opportunity in investment in the Gambia?
Advising people on investment is very difficult to do without really knowing people's personal circumstances.
That's true.
You really need to know somebody's personal circumstance. You need to know their appetite towards, how they react to risk. You need to understand how long they can go with their investment. Now, all of these things count. But generally speaking, I think investment opportunities in the Gambia for now are limited. Now, if I am in the diaspora, I wouldn't necessarily, I think even in the diaspora, there are various ways to invest, even in the diaspora. I know we have a very strong commitment back to the country and we really want to invest in the country. But I think we need to create first the enabling environment. The best forms of investment will really be investing in the up and coming small enterprises, because that is where economic growth and employment will come from. But right now, we do not have platforms to do that. I think there has to be a platform for people. If that was there, my advice would be invest in that vehicle, and that vehicle will diversify your investments, and that will be better. I personally would never really advise anybody to invest in property. Not that property is not good, but you see, everybody seems to be investing in property in this country. If you go around, again, anecdotally, the kind of property, there is a lot of housing deficit in this country, and yet there's a lot of investment going into housing. But the people abroad, the kind of money, the kind of houses they want and the houses they can invest into is not affordable by people in the country who are looking for housing.
That's true.
Now, unless you go to a lower tier of housing to accommodate for the needs of housing that is here, or if you're going to the high-end housing, there isn't really the depth in this market for all those houses to be taken. So if you move around, there's a lot of void in housing here. Rentals, not all houses are fully rented out.
That's true.
So what you're hoping then at that point, your asset is almost unproductive because your asset is really not generating neither profit nor cash flow.
So yes, carry on, sir, carry on.
And if your asset is not generating that, so really it's not productive. So you're just hoping for an appreciation of value. So it's a good store of value, but not necessarily a good productive asset in the sense of generating cash flow and profitability.
So what advice will you give us that wants to invest, being myself or Gambian, especially Gambians, even Gambian living back home? What advice can you give them in terms of investment? What should they invest in the Gambia?
Well, now, I know there's a strong connection here. I would say, if you're really pushing me to say what to invest in Gambia, I will tell you there's very few investment opportunities in the Gambia. It's only, if you want to say invest in equity,
okay,
your possibility of investing in equity is almost non-existent. Even big businesses here, like Social Security, for example, they struggle to invest in equity or anything. So they tend to have a lot of their investments in treasury bills because the opportunity simply does not exist. The entrepreneurs in this country, most of them want to run their businesses. They want to own the businesses 100%. They do not want to share the risk
partnership.
of owning. Yes, they don't want to do that. So even though they need equity, they would rather try to go to the bank and borrow money instead of using the currency of their business and actually raise equity through offerings. So they wouldn't want to do that. So I think it's about educating the people to actually say, running a business and having control of a business does not mean 100% ownership. Your creative idea is not lost because part of that business is gone. In fact, it is good because to grow your business, you need equity, not loan. You don't need the burden of a loan to really grow your business. So really, investment in the entrepreneurship is limited. So what then remains is speculative land purchase, and land in itself in that form is not productive, or invest in property, or invest in treasury bills. Those were never my first choices in investment, never. So if I'm in a diaspora,
can you tell the Gambians what was your first choices in investment?
No, if I'm in the diaspora, I will tell Gambians, venture into other forms of investments in those countries. Accumulate wealth from your spare funds. When you accumulate funds, then you will be much more at liberty to come back to this country and actually make a significant difference. Now, people in the West have one of the best investment opportunities before them, the equity market, for example. If you look at that as an asset class, it is probably the best asset class you can come across. Take any chart, look at the history of any chart, look at it from left to right, you will always see it rising. There's always something that holds back people, volatility. A lot of people confuse volatility with risk. Volatility is a short-term phenomenon. It's really not a long time. If you look at a long term, always short-term phenomena you always see them on the chart as a blip. Take 2007, 2008, during the great financial crisis. You look at what was happening, or even this first quarter of 2020, around March, when the pandemic really hit the West, and you saw the fastest drop in the markets, where by end of March or so, a lot of the market dropped by almost 30% in value. But there was also the fastest recovery over time. Now, that may not be sustainable, it may come back again. The point I am making, that is volatility, is not risk. If you actually invest in good businesses over any period of time, they always go from left to the right. You will always see the chart rising from left to the right, going upwards. That is established. It's the best form of investment plan. If I'm in a diaspora, I will tell people, after you pay your debts, it's always important to pay off your debts.
That's true.
Loans don't make you rich.
That's true.
Loan never make you rich.
Instead,
your best form of investment, be debt-free.
Best form of investment to be debt-free.
Be debt-free.
Thank you.
Except for a mortgage.
Except for the mortgage. Which was going to be my next question. Would you advise diasporans to engage in going into mortgage in the various countries that we live?
It's not. If you want it as your primary home, yeah, it makes sense. As a primary home, it makes sense. But again, it's a significant investment. It's a significant concentration of risk. But for a fact, it's a very liquid market, and for a fact, historically, prices will go up. So it's not a bad form of investment. But I will rather invest in the stock market. It is the best asset class. And you have the possibility of investing with one of the brightest people with business ideas. And so you see, entrepreneurship is an innate skill. Not everybody has it. Doesn't matter. We all may want to be entrepreneurs,
That's
but
true.
we are not all entrepreneurs. But we can invest with entrepreneurs. We have to. It's like skills of any type. Whether it is singing, not everybody is a singer. There are some people who have been given this skill, just like football, whatever you think about. There are some people who are genius in books. Entrepreneurship is also the same. There are very few percentage of people. That is why a significant number of businesses fail, because only few people. It's an innate skill. So you may not have the skill, but certainly can invest with people who have the skills, because they also will require capital they do not have. And that is what you get with the stock market. You invest with some of the best businesses, but accept not every investment idea will work out. Most will fail. But the ones that succeed will actually wipe out the rest of the failures. But you have to have a long-term view. Don't be a trader. Have the temperament. You must have the temperament. It requires a lot of guts, because when the market drops by 30, 40%, fear sets in. So you have to be able to overcome all of those things. Diversify, and then you will. So accumulate wealth there, because you have the opportunity to accumulate. When you accumulate, you can come back to the country and actually make a significant difference.
Come back to the country and make it.
That is not stopping the 300 million coming, because the 300 million will still continue to come.
That will still continue coming. Yeah.
Sorry?
I said that will be still coming. That will still come in.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So,
but most people in the diaspora now are having spare change, which they are putting in savings account, or leaving it in their accounts, or doing some bits and pieces with it. Those are the kind of monies I'm saying. Before you do that, put it in the stock market, generate some wealth. You are diversifying. You're putting some wealth in property in this country, but you're also keeping some of those wealth in very, very good productive assets. And then, build the wealth there.
That's true. Build the wealth there. So coming to my final question, Mr. Manjang, will you be someone that Gambians or diasporans will see in the political arena very soon sometime? What I'm realizing. Yes.
Politics requires a different skill set.
But I'm sure you've got the skills.
It requires a lot of compromise. I like I said, it's something I have severally been thinking about, and I'm looking for the right opportunity.
So you're not ruling it out. It's not something that you're ruling out.
I'm not ruling it out. I think it will be improper, But I'm looking for the right opportunity. I haven't seen the right opportunity yet, but I'm looking for the right opportunity to be somehow able to contribute. I think all of us must, in our own ways, contribute. I think if we don't, it will be to the disadvantage of this country.
You heard him, Mr. Mohammed Manjang. That brings us to the end of our very special interview here on TI Media with me, your presenter, Mr. Lamin Jammeh, on the Diaspora. What an interview. He didn't rule it out. So if we see Mr. Manjang on the political arena, please go out there and listen to him. He has something and a lot to contribute. Mr. Mohammed Manjang, me alonka telam bi ñunum luntam bati natale kachata ñin sobjoto me alonko walam Gambia be Gambia sambala ñame alhamdulillah al yamoyle ay même fo Gambia ñatota ani Gambia dingol ñanta men kala pour Gambia tata ñe duyango fananke ñañini ka fanan ay doko me alonko ak Gambia bantola ani social security me alonko ko ñalon ne ko nun nafulo men nun jiya ka tiñalen nun anata ay wo doko kendo ta aya tilindi aya lande silo kan man sakunda nata menke na walem ka bondi je ka fa ko be doku dole diile la membe sambala dula do to ka tay samba je hani sango man clear but ata fongona da tandi man sakunda la ko amanke fenti mi yalan ko be interest la pour ko do ko ta amanke nye feel of asparity mbokay di ñu setan fi be tay ci TI Media man la sen presenter Lamin Jammeh on this very special show tay mo amone gan gu mag di am fierté am content gu mag mag mu don Mr. Mohammed Manjang ñep xamé ko ci financial expert bi nga xam ne nii moom la def ak liggéey gu mag bii mu def Gambia ci social security ba jamono yi ñu nekk nii ñu ngi ko jaajëfal bu baax a baax mbaa faale ala baraka baake we telling you thank you very much and stay tuned till next time with me your presenter Lamin Jammeh on the Diaspora Eye. Thank you.